Cale Arden had always been ordinary in every sense that mattered. He was not stronger, faster, or smarter than his peers, and yet something about him refused to accept the ordinary limits of life. On the remote mining world of Lithera 9, where jagged mountains tore into storm-heavy skies, Cale worked among hundreds of colonists who eked out their existence under the shadow of alien threats and harsh elements. It was during one of the worst raids in the colony's history that Cale's true nature revealed itself. Thousands of Zilrath warriors descended upon Lithera 9, expecting to crush the miners like insects, but Cale saw not invincibility in their ranks, only opportunity. With nothing but his mind and the raw instinct to survive, he organized the terrified colonists into defensive positions, turning jagged cliffs and narrow passes into traps that defy conventional warfare. When the colony's central reactor teetered on the brink of destruction, Cale rigged it to explode, but only after ensuring that every last colonist had slipped through secret tunnels he had discovered months earlier. The Zilrath had never been counted like this. They retreated, shocked and humiliated, carrying tales of the human who fought without fear, who seemed to laugh in the face of death. Word of Cale's deeds spread slowly through human channels, but faster through alien whispers. Traders, mercenaries, and even scholars of distant species began recounting stories of a human who defied expectation, whose ingenuity turned the tide of battle with nothing more than strategy and daring. He became known among some alien raiders as the human who laughs at death, and that name carried weight. Where others saw fragility, Cale embodied a principle no statistics could capture: unpredictability paired with relentless determination. It was not his weapons or strength that earned respect, but his refusal to accept the inevitable. As years passed, Cale's reputation grew, and so did the scale of the challenges he faced. The Zyrant Dominion, an empire vast enough to encompass multiple star systems, underestimated humanity. Cale did not. Using tactics that twisted logic and defied conventional military thought, he turned the Dominion's rigid structures against them, exploiting bureaucracy, communication protocols, and arrogance in ways no alien commander could anticipate. Entire fleets were decimated not by brute force, but by the careful orchestration of chaos. In the eyes of the Zyrant, Cale became a puzzle they could not solve, a variable in an equation that should have been predictable. Alien scholars wrote treatises on him, calling him an anomaly, a species-defying genius whose courage and creativity had no precedent. Yet Cale never sought glory. His victories were measured not by the enemies he defeated, but by the lives he protected. Each daring maneuver, each improbable strategy, was rooted in a simple principle: humans had value, and they would not bow simply because the universe demanded it. It was during the battle of HFY Prime that Cale's legend reached its peak. Outnumbered 10-1, the human fleet danced among asteroid fields, struck with surgical precision, and exploited weaknesses that no alien mind could predict. By the battle's end, the Dominion had lost not just ships, but pride, and Cale had proven something deeper than tactical brilliance. He had proven that humanity's spirit could stand against overwhelming odds. Stories of Cale Arden spread across galaxies like wildfire. Traders offered exotic gifts, alien poets wrote verses in his honor, and diplomats carried his name as a symbol of the unpredictable power of humans. Even species that had never encountered a human respected the idea of him, as if the very notion of Cale Arden embodied what it meant to resist, to survive, and to thrive against impossible odds. He became more than a man. He became a legend, the personification of human audacity and ingenuity. The end of Cale's life is cloaked in mystery. Some claim he vanished in the Othran Nebula, leaving behind nothing but whispers of his deeds. Others believe he still travels the stars, intervening silently when the weak are threatened, always leaving traces of hope in his wake. Whatever the truth, one fact remains undeniable. Alien civilizations now regarded humans not as fragile, insignificant creatures, but as beings capable of shaping destiny, capable of defying fate itself. Cale Arden had done more than survive, more than fight. He had rewritten the cosmic perception of humanity. In every retelling, across star systems and species, his name carried reverence. He was a human who became a legend in alien lore, and through him, the universe learned that humanity, no matter how small or overlooked, possessed an indomitable spirit that could never be extinguished. After THRYNN Prime, Cale did not rest. The The victories had earned humanity a fragile reputation across the stars, but Kale knew that recognition alone would not protect them. Alien empires, even those who had heard of his exploits, still regarded humans as insignificant, as a species that could be crushed if provoked. Kale's mind, always restless, turned toward preparation rather than celebration. He traveled to the outer colonies, visiting worlds abandoned by commerce, mining stations left at the mercy of harsh climates, teaching settlers not just how to survive, but how to fight smartly. Every encounter, every lesson, was a seed planted for a future the galaxy could not anticipate. On the ice world of Vera, for Kale encountered the HFY, a species whose ships had terrorized trade routes for decades. Unlike the Zilrath or Xyrant, the HFY relied on speed and numbers, striking with precision before vanishing into the void. Most humans would have surrendered before seeing them, but Kale observed their patterns, noting the subtle delays in communication, and the way their smaller scouts reacted unpredictably, using the frozen terrain as camouflage and constructing makeshift traps from mining equipment. Kale led a handful of humans against a HFY raiding fleet. The battle was brutal, claustrophobic, and unlike any conventional engagement. Humans were vastly outgunned, yet Kale's tactics turned every disadvantage into an advantage. The HFY survivors returned to their systems, speaking of a human commander who anticipated movements before they occurred, who seemed to manipulate chaos into order. Every victory added layers to Kale's legend. Alien historians began documenting him not merely as a warrior, but as a phenomenon, an anomaly in the galaxy's expectations. The human who bends probability, one Xenian scholar wrote, noting how Kale's successes defied statistical models. It was not only his courage or intelligence that fascinated them, but his creativity, his ability to see connections others could not, and his unwillingness to accept loss as inevitable. Across galaxies, Kale became a symbol of humanity's potential, a single figure whose deeds challenged centuries of assumptions about weakness and fragility. Kale's legend was also carried through the quiet acts no one would chronicle. He intervened in disputes between alien colonies, prevented unnecessary deaths, and ensured that small human settlements were never forgotten. These acts, unseen by the wider galaxy, reinforce the image of humans not merely as survivors, but as protectors capable of empathy, strategy, and resilience. It was in these quiet victories, far from battlefields and fame, that Kale's philosophy of humanity truly shone. Yet danger always followed recognition. The Xyrant Dominion, humiliated repeatedly by a single human, grew increasingly obsessed. They dispatched their most cunning tacticians and fastest fleets to hunt him, believing that the capture or death of Kale Arden would end human defiance forever. Kale, ever adaptive, did not confront them directly. Instead, he turned the Dominion's pursuit into a series of diversions and traps, drawing them into asteroid fields, leading them through collapsing nebulae, and outmaneuvering their fleets in ways that made their pursuit feel almost like a nightmare. Each time, the Dominion was forced to retreat, leaving their analysts baffled and their fleets diminished. During one of these campaigns, Kale forged alliances with alien species who had suffered under Xyrant oppression. With HFY scouts, Lithrid miners, and even rogue Xyrant factions at his side, Kale orchestrated attacks that disrupted supply chains, freed enslaved worlds, and weakened the Dominion's grip on multiple sectors. What began as isolated acts of human ingenuity became coordinated, interstellar resistance. Kale's vision of humanity as more than a single species struggle took shape, showing the galaxy that humans could inspire not just awe, but cooperation and hope. Amidst these triumphs, Kale remained human in the smallest, most profound ways. He laughed with his comrades, mourned their losses, and bore the weight of responsibility with a quiet humility. He never sought the pedestal that alien cultures seemed eager to place him upon. To him, every success was a step toward proving that humanity's value was not in legends or songs, but in the courage to stand against impossible odds, to act when others faltered, and to never abandon those who could not defend themselves. By the time Kale approached the edges of known space, he had become more than a commander, more than a tactician, more than a human being. In the whispers of alien fleets, in the stories told by traders and poets, he had become an idea that even a single human, armed with intelligence, courage, and determination, could shape the course of civilizations. And as he charted a course toward the unexplored void, Kale carried with him a simple truth. Humanity would endure, not through brute force alone, but through spirit, ingenuity, and the unshakable refusal to accept defeat. Beyond the edges of known space, where stars grew sparse and darkness reigned, Kale encountered a force unlike any he had faced before. It was not a single species nor a single fleet, but a coalition of empires. The Eridani, the Volcarian, remnants of Zyrant dominion, united by fear of the human who had become a living myth. They had studied every battle, dissected every tactic, and yet they knew instinctively that defeating Kale required more than numbers, more than firepower. It required outthinking a mind that had never bowed. Kale observed their preparations with a calm born of experience. Where others saw overwhelming odds, he saw patterns, weaknesses, and possibilities. He moved quietly, building alliances with species who had once considered humans irrelevant. These allies supplied intelligence, ships, and crews, each one inspired by the stories of the human, who refused to surrender. Kale's presence transformed hope into action, fear into resistance. What began as disparate forces became a network capable of unpredictable, coordinated strikes that the coalition could not anticipate. When the first confrontation came at the Rift of Dalmara, the coalition brought thousands of ships, confident that the human fleet would be annihilated. But Kale had prepared the battlefield itself as an ally. He lured their forces into a dense field of cosmic debris, turning their superior numbers into a liability. With decoy signals, hidden mines, and synchronized strikes, the coalition fleet was torn apart before they could even understand what had happened. Ships disappeared into asteroid clusters, communications jammed, and command structure collapsed under a cascade of unpredicted events. It was a victory not of strength, but of ingenuity, the human ability to bend chaos into a weapon. Stories of the battle spread rapidly, carried across interstellar networks, spoken in awe by alien commanders, and recorded by historians who could barely comprehend the scale of Kale's achievement. The human who reshaped stars, they whispered. Even in victory, Kale remained disciplined, refusing to indulge in celebration. Every move, every strategy, was a step towards something greater. The preservation of life, the empowerment of those who had been dismissed as weak, and the demonstration that humanity could stand unbroken in a galaxy that assumed otherwise. But the coalition was relentless. They regrouped, combining fleets and technology, determined to crush the anomaly that Kale represented. This time, Kale could not rely solely on cunning. He had to inspire his allies to embrace risk, trust their instincts, and fight in ways that defied alien doctrine. He trained them in tactics humans had mastered: improvisation, adaptability, and exploiting every assumption the enemy made. Slowly, they became a force that moved as one, unpredictable and unyielding, and Kale became the living symbol of their unity. In a decisive engagement at the abyssal expanse, the coalition unleashed its full might, confident that this would end the human threat once and for all. But Kale, standing on the bridge of his modest flagship, saw opportunities where others saw only peril. He used gravitational anomalies to bend the paths of entire fleets, deployed stealth squadrons into the heart of enemy formations, and coordinated strikes that seemed impossible to execute. By the battle's end, the coalition was shattered, retreating in disarray, their fleets decimated, their pride broken. Aliens who had once dismissed humanity now spoke of Kale with reverence and fear, a singular human capable of rewriting the rules of war itself. Even then, Kale did not linger for praise. He vanished into uncharted systems, his presence a constant question mark for those who sought to understand him. To alien civilizations, he became more than a commander. He became a legend, a myth that embodied humanity's resilience, ingenuity, and unyielding spirit. Traders told tales of a human who could outthink entire fleets. Scholars debated the patterns of his strategy, and poets immortalized his courage in verse. Kale had shown the galaxy that humans were not fragile, that they could challenge the impossible, and that their spirit was a force no empire could ignore. Through every battle, every alliance, and every victory, Kale carried with him the simple truth that had guided him from Lithra 9 to the farthest reaches of the galaxy. Humanity's strength was not measured in firepower or numbers, but in the audacity to act, the courage to stand, and a refusal to accept limits imposed by others. Across species and systems, his name became synonymous with hope, determination, and the enduring power of a human being who refused to be ordinary. Cale Arden, the human who became a legend in alien lore, had transformed not only his species' place in the galaxy, but the very way civilizations understood what it meant to be alive, defiant, and unstoppable. For years after the abyssal expanse, Cale Arden became a ghost in the galaxy. His victories had inspired entire species to rethink their assumptions about humanity, yet new threats continued to emerge. In the outer reaches of uncharted space, sensors detect a shadow drifting between star systems, an ancient intelligence known only as the Nahari, a species, or perhaps something older, whose technology bent the very fabric of space. They were unlike any foe Cale had faced, possessing fleets that moved faster than light and weapons that could annihilate entire colonies with a single strike. Entire civilizations had already fallen beneath their advance, and yet the whispers of a human who defied the odds reached even the Nahari. Cale understood immediately that conventional tactics would not suffice. Numbers meant nothing against Nahari. Speed and firepower alone would be useless. He gathered a coalition of humans, Kale-White-H Litherans and Rogue Zyrant, forming a fleet of allies who had once feared, fought, or admired him. But this time, it was not just about fighting. It was about survival on a scale he had never faced. Every decision carried the weight of countless lives, every error a potential extinction. Cale became the strategist, teacher, and symbol all at once, a beacon of hope in the face of cosmic annihilation. The first encounter with the Nahari came near the star system of Valeth. Their ships emerged like shadows, nearly invisible against a void, striking with precision that humans had never seen. Entire planetary defenses were obliterated before the fleet could react. Cale observed patterns in their attacks, noting subtle delays between their strikes, and realized that the Nahari operated not as individuals but as a collective intelligence with a rhythm that could be anticipated. Using that insight, he devised a plan that seemed suicidal: to lure part of the fleet into a trap within a collapsing star cluster. The battle was a nightmare made real. Ships disintegrated, lasers tore through space, and explosions lit the void like distant suns. Yet, Cale moved with precision and calm, coordinating strikes that forced the Nahari fleet into predictable paths. He used debris, radiation pockets, and gravitational anomalies as allies, turning the environment into a weapon no alien technology could predict. Ships that should have been destroyed survived through ingenuity, sacrifice, and the stubborn defiance Cale demanded of his fleet. By the time the engagement ended, the Nahari had suffered losses significant enough to force a retreat, an unprecedented outcome against a species that had never been challenged. Word of the victory spread across human and alien systems alike. The Nahari, once considered invincible, now whispered tales of the human, who shaped chaos into strategy, who transformed desperation into triumph. To alien scholars, Cale became a case study in unpredictability and courage, a phenomenon that redefined what it meant to confront a threat that defied comprehension. To humans, he became the embodiment of hope itself, the living proof that even against forces beyond imagination, they could survive and prevail. But Cale's triumph was not just in battle. He used the moment to forge alliances that had never existed before, uniting species against the Nahari in ways that no empire had attempted. Trade, technology, and intelligence flowed between systems that had once been enemies, bound together by the example of a single human who refused to yield. In doing so, Cale demonstrated something far greater than tactical genius: humanity's capacity to inspire, to unify, and to rise above fear through determination, intellect, and compassion. Even as the galaxy celebrated this new era of cooperation, Cale did not seek accolades. He vanished once more into the void, leaving behind fleets capable of defending themselves and civilizations prepared to face the unknown. His name had become legend across countless star systems, not as a mere mortal, but as a symbol of what humanity could achieve when courage and intellect converged. In every whispered story, in every historian's text, in every alien poet's verse, one truth endured: humans, once considered fragile and insignificant, were capable of shaping the fate of the galaxy. Cale Arden, the human who became a legend in alien lore, had not only survived the impossible, he had proven that humanity's spirit was a force the universe could never ignore. The galaxy had changed because of him. Systems that once trembled at human insignificance now looked to humanity with awe, respect, and in some cases fear. Yet Cale Arden's journey was far from over. Beyond the outer rim, beyond the maps of even the most daring explorers, a threat loomed. An intelligence older than the stars themselves, a presence that bent reality in ways no mind could fully comprehend. It was a void-born, a species, or perhaps a force, that existed not only in space but in the spaces between, capable of erasing entire fleets before they registered on sensors, capable of bending perception and probability. The galaxy had whispered them in hushed tones, and for the first time, even legends like Cale understood the stakes. This was a threat that could end life across every system, human or alien. Cale did not hesitate. He gathered the fleets of humanity and their allies, Cale YDH Slytherins, Rogue Zyrant, and even isolated alien factions who had once fought one another but now united under a single purpose. Cale's leadership transcended species. He became not just a commander, but a symbol, the embodiment of what it meant to confront the impossible and endure. As the Void-born advanced, he moved first, striking not with the force of numbers, but with the force of insight. He anticipated movements, exploited weaknesses, and drew the enemy into traps that required courage, sacrifice, and absolute trust in one another. The battles against the Void-born were unlike anything the galaxy had witnessed. Fleets vanished in the folds of space. Weapons failed against intangible foes, and entire colonies teetered on the brink of destruction. Cale, however, turned the chaos into opportunity. Using human ingenuity and intuition, he devised strategies that no algorithm or alien logic could predict. Mines were hidden in void shadows, decoys mimicked entire fleets, and strikes were coordinated in ways that made the impossible routine. His own ship, small and unassuming, became the pivot around which the galaxy's defense turned. In the heart of the final engagement, Cale made a choice that would define his legend forever. A massive void-born vessel, larger than any human imagination could conceive, was on course to annihilate a critical human-alien alliance station. Cale led a daring mission directly into the heart of the enemy formation. With a combination of stealth, misdirection, and precision strikes, he disabled the vessel's main systems, turning its own energy against it. The explosion was immense, visible across light years, and yet Cale emerged unscathed, a testament not to luck, but to human determination, foresight, and adaptability. The Void-born, facing losses they had never anticipated, retreated into the void from which they had come. No species had ever driven them back, and in the aftermath, the galaxy stood in stunned silence. Cale had not only survived, he had rewritten the rules of survival itself. Across star systems, alien civilizations honored him in their own ways. Treaties were formed, monuments built, and stories told that placed Cale Arden alongside the greatest figures in galactic history. Yet even in victory, he remained humble. He had never sought fame, only the preservation of life, the protection of the weak, and the demonstration that humanity could rise to meet any challenge. In the quiet years that followed, Cale disappeared from public view. Some claimed he sailed the stars alone, intervening silently wherever injustice arose. Others believed he had transcended mortal limits, becoming a part of the cosmic tapestry itself, a living legend whose name would inspire generations. Across alien lore, humans were no longer underestimated. They were respected, sometimes feared, but always acknowledged as beings capable of incredible courage, ingenuity, and resilience. And so the story endured. Cale Arden, the human who became a legend in alien lore, had shown the galaxy that even a single human, armed with intelligence, courage, and an unyielding spirit, could challenge the impossible, unite the unlikely, and leave a mark that no star, no empire, and no force, no matter how ancient, could erase. Across the cosmos, his name became synonymous with hope, defiance, and the boundless potential of humanity itself. In every whisper, every story, every recounting of impossible odds overcome, Cale lived on, not just as a man, but as proof that humanity's spirit was limitless, unstoppable, and eternal.